kick is in the air. I feel like flying away, like two kites, just me and you, hooray. Hello, the sun is shining through trees, rays are sparkling. I feel happiness all around me. Oh, what a day! I feel like floating away as a cloud so light. You make me feel like this today. Hello, the weather is sunny. Look up, oh, what a clear day. Sparrows flying happy over me.
The man is very natural, regular guy, as my friends would say. Nothing odd about him.
He loves to talk. Great conversationalist.
Doesn't talk about like himself. I don't know much about him.
He's a quiet sort, keeps to himself.
He seems like an old chap. The artist type, I'd guess.
You know, they say there's 6 degrees of separation between all of us. So, 6 handshakes, that's all it takes. Straight through strangers, right to someone we know. But, who do we really know? You know? Friends? Family? Acquaintances? Strangers? It's all just a big blob of personality. Just lying beneath the surface. You know, like an iceberg. What's really underneath all that? Does anyone know? It's a mystery.
He writes poetry constantly. Not much of a socializer. Quiet as a mouse. Just keeps to himself.
He wrote very aggressive editorials for a national newspaper.
He translates from Arabic into English, some kind of text or books. You know, he lived in Morocco for a while.
I met him in Switzerland outside of Zurich. I was finishing my research for my dissertation over there on young Mozart in Zurich, and I ran into him at a cafe. Charming person. We chatted briefly and then immediately hit it off. He was writing his memoirs, he said. We ended up having coffee every day for a week. We talked about everything and anything. Religion, politics, sports, strange weather occurrences, the price of tea in China. We never ran out of subjects. Fascinating fellow. We both talked so much. I didn't get any research done, he didn't get any writing done, but we had a blast. Then I had to come back to the States. Never saw him again. Should have kept in touch. What a shame we didn't keep in touch.
trains, the ones under the Christmas trees.
He took in strays. He had at least 7 cats and 2 dogs. They were drawn to him, I guess.
Oh, him. He collects old photos. Yeah, I seen him in the antique store in town, looking at the old photo bins.
He sure does have a collection. But it's antique BMW motorcycles. Yeah. Well, I sold him his first bike. He was pretty knowledgeable right off the bat. He knew exactly what he wanted. So somehow, I was able to find this World War II 1944 RM72. It's a little tricky getting it into shape, but I managed. The next thing I know, the guy thinks he's the Red Baron. He's flying down Main Street like a bullet with his red helmet on and scarf, looking like Snoopy on top of the doghouse. And he always wears that beat-up leather bomber jacket, too. Makes for quite a memorable picture, I must say. The wild one of Paulie, Vermont.
And then one night I saw her on Tomlin in her one-evening show in search of courage in life and the universe. And I basically fell in love. And I said, I can't make a movie by secretaries unless she's one of the secretaries. And it's a true story. On the way home, I turned on...
Married? No, definitely not. No, not the type. Too much of a loner.
Darling, really, comedy. And I'm going to have the least interesting role.
I hear he married fresh out of high school. His sweetheart.
I've never heard that he had any kids. He should have. He's sweet. You know, the fatherly type.
No, he was too wild to settle down to marry.
Dating? He was a science teacher in an inner city school somewhere. He definitely didn't have time for personal relationships.
I think he was an American history teacher in Vermont. Loved to do reenactments right in the classroom.
I think he taught writing in a prison in the Midwest.
I heard he was an art protege as a kid. At a pretty young age, he graduated from the Juilliard School in New York City as an art history major.
My grandmother taught him to dance in dance class. He wasn't very good, but the women all swooned over him. He seemed very shy.
You know, his whole teaching career, like he taught abroad. Science, writing, history. He's fluent in, I think, like 4 or 5 languages. He may have even given, like, a private voice lessons, too. I mean, that guy, he is definitely a genius for sure.
I was 17 when I took voice lessons with him in Zurich, Switzerland. My family's a military family, so we lived everywhere. He was more thorough and strict, by the book, you know? But he was also very kind, patient, and super encouraging. And I really needed that at that time. We seemed to share the same great love for the opera. I mean, this man knew everything about every opera. I could never stop him. He was like an encyclopedia. I was so impressed and really admired his purest attitude for classical music. And then one day, laying on his desk was a punk rock album, and he was on the cover. So I asked him about it, and he was like, that was my crazy punk phase. Crazy punk phase. I never quite looked at him the same after that.
Oh, he's got some stories, all right. I heard he sang in a rock band in the day. All sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That's all I know.
Him? Yeah, he was the lead singer in the band that I started. Called it Harpy. We used to practice in my dad's old cow barn. We did covers, no originals. Things from the Sex Pistols, the Clash, the Vovoids. We got some gigs too. Played a lot throughout the state, a little bit in the city. We did end up in Boston a couple times. He had this coolness and this swagger that the rest of us just didn't have. He was also older, so he could buy us alcohol. He didn't drink. He was pretty quiet behind stage, but on stage, he was wild, and the girls, they just swooned over him. Truth. He would have us stop in the middle of a show, stop the music, and then he'd start doing this original poetry with these Elvis gyrations. The drummer would play over those gyrations. It's a punk rock Elvis. It was crazy, man. Oh no, that was the funny part. They were like high poetry at a punk rock concert. It's like Iggy Pop meets Longfellow. I didn't understand a word he said, but he had great moves. Girls adored him. We were totally jealous. You know, it was his moves and his songs that got us that record deal at United Artists. This was the mid-1970s when they had just signed Dr. Feelgood and the Stranglers. So UA was setting up this punk rock revolution. We were going to be part of that. But the band broke up. Not totally sure why. We'd only lasted like 2 years max. He just went on his merry way. Boston, New York, some other city. I don't know. Man, those are fun times.
He draws every day. You know, those pencil drawings, sketches?
I see him out there in all kinds of weather with his watercolors and sketching pencils. He just pops up anywhere, on steps looking up at the buildings, staring at some barn, or at the firehouse in town. He'll be on the side of the road looking out at a field at something. I've never seen what he's actually drawn. Don't know if he's any good at all.
He paints portraits. Yeah, I heard he had a piece hung at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in an exhibit for promising young artists. I think he had an oil painting of a young woman. That was like, 40 years ago or more now.
I saw him do some experimental pieces at La Mama in New York. Mesmerizing. I wonder why he didn't stay in the city.
It was a men's hat shop he opened up. I'm not sure where. Classy stuff, though. You could tell he had great taste from the hats he wears.
No, he used to own a racehorse. But he retired him after a short time.
I hear he was a stage actor who didn't quite make it on Broadway, so he came back to his hometown. Too bad. He has a kind of presence about him, don't you think?
Someone said he owned a cigar shop in another state, a real connoisseur. But he gave up smoking and he sold his shop some years ago.
restaurant, well, I wouldn't say it was a restaurant, really. It was more like a diner or something close to that. Right here on Avenue A and East 13th Street, right in the city. I lived nearby at the time. His place was called Nguyen Yum, or UN Yum, like yummy. And it was a fancy name for a fancy place. The full name was the United Nations Yum International Fast Food Cuisine. It served fast foods from all over the world, so mostly Thai, Mexican, Ukrainian, Moroccan, and American. Yeah. He had a cook come in from Morocco, and this cook was very well known, someone he'd known from his travels. Masad was his name. And, he was very highly known in his country, so it was a really big deal that he came here, and he was the main cook. Anyway, nobody came. They were too afraid, really, of the food. It was too foreign at the time. Nobody really had a clue of what to expect, and so they just stayed away. But I went. And every time I saw him in there, he was cooking, cleaning, sweeping, just doing everything. And if anybody did show up, he would treat them like royalty. It was really nice. But he wasn't too good at promotion. And I tried to tell him, like, he should work harder on promoting. But he always said, don't worry. They'll come. They'll figure out what this place is all about. Well, it took me a while to figure out what the place was about, but I finally did. I think it was too late. Yeah. What he wanted to do was bring people of all different cultures together and have them all eat under one roof, all of them at one table in peace. Yeah, he would have loved that. I'm sorry it never happened at his place. UN Young. But that Moroccan chef, Masad, he made the best tacos.
I see him in every restaurant in town, always eating out. The man lives for food.
I heard he went to culinary school in Minneapolis. Same place my cousin went.
Yeah, he comes in here pretty much all the time. He orders just about the same thing. Simple. And lots and lots and lots of coffee. I'm always refilling that. Maybe a dozen times, maybe more. I don't know, I lose count. But with him, I don't know, I don't mind. He's sweet and pleasant. One thing, though, this a little bit of an odd thing. He always leaves these big poems written on napkins with his tip inside for us every single time he's here. And it's really kind of funny. It makes me feel invigorated and it moves me. I think it's just how he captures the little things in life. About how a cup of coffee, the first cup of coffee is like gold dripping down the back of your throat on a cold winter's day. Or how that one beam of light comes in on a freezing morning and gives you the encouragement to carry out the day in a frozen winter. And it really makes my day shine. I think he means it like that. I really do.
I think he's an atheist. Yeah, I never saw him attend any church.
He's a devout Lutheran. His father was a lay minister.
He's a Buddhist. I've seen him hanging prayer flags or whatever it is you call them.
It's funny, actually. Yeah, I had him for my philosophy of religions class at my university in Connecticut. I don't really know if he was, religious or not. I mean, it never really came up. But at the end of at the final class, I finally worked up the courage to ask him just that exact question. I mean, we'd all been pretty curious about it, whether or not he believed in God or some kind of deity. So when I asked him, he just looked at me, didn't say anything, but he just smiled. And then he took out a piece of paper and started writing. I didn't know what he was doing. But then when he was finished, he handed the piece of paper to me, and he told me to just read it later and think on it, and then get back to him with what I thought the answer was. It's kind of a shame, but we never did get to talk about it. He went abroad right after that class. I think he knew that we wouldn't ever be able to talk on it. So I don't think that was important to him, whether or not I thought he believed in God or whatever. You know what? I have exactly what he wrote right here. I kept it all these years. It was so astonishing to me, just really surprising that he could just write something like this right off the top of his head. Here, do you want to? Oh, I can. Oh, sure, yeah, I can read it. Okay. When I walk along with two others, from at least one I will be able to learn. Because all that we are is the result of what we have thought. And since the life of this world is merely enjoyment of delusion, let us get up now and fight for our lives. For today is but like yesterday and the day before. But let this fight be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. After a while, I was able to decipher exactly what this was. It's different quotes from religious texts. He had taken different parts from each religion and put them together. It's so inspirational. And the fact that he could just put it down on paper in that moment. So is this a religious man? You tell me.
He walks down past my shop every day and waves.
I see him walking along the path that goes around the lake. Winter, spring, summer, or fall. He's always walking.
I never see him walk, just driving his beat-up Chevy around town.
He was in the Air Force. Served a full 8 years is what I heard. After he was out of the service, he flew private jets for a swanky company in New Jersey, I think. Met a lot of celebrities that way.
I think he lived in Canada for a little bit. Must have moved up there because of the draft happening in the States. That one was Korea. Yeah, I think he was a conscientious objector or something like that. It must have been, I don't know.
He'll be sitting there in the library, reading, and I might not even notice he's there. He's so quiet. He never asks for help, but always gives me a great big smile. I think he's shy.
Yeah, he comes to the library. He barely says a word except, hello, good morning, good afternoon. He mostly just sits around and reads. But one thing we've noticed is that when he leaves, we often find small pieces of paper with poems written on them. Could be original, something he has, come up with, or perhaps something from his memory. And the poems are on little slips of paper, and they're folded up, and then he'll poke them into books, stick them in the stacks. Once he rolled some up and put them like a scroll and stuffed them in the stacks. Or we even found one folded up in an origami crane. And yeah, he's an odd duck. I mean, he definitely keeps us on our toes.
He asked me if I had any jazz LPs in my store. I think he's a collector. He came in and browsed all my bins for anything new. And we talked briefly. About old movies, mostly. He seems full of stories. There is one story he told me I just can't seem to forget. So, he's walking in Central Park up near the Dakota Hotel. He says he lived not far from there at the time, and he always walked in the park there. It's kind of a gray fall day. Not many people out, very quiet. All of a sudden, he sees what looks like John Lennon of the Beatles sitting on a park bench reading. He stops and stands behind him several feet away and is staring. Is that really John? He's asking himself. Then the guy turns and looks to the side. He's like, yeah, that's John, all right. So he's watching John sitting on a park bench reading. Then all of a sudden, John puts the book down He gets up and he closes his army jacket. And he looks for something in the pocket. I think it was a scarf. And he starts to leave. But he's left his book on the bench. So he says, he runs over to the bench and grabs the book and he says, "Hey, John!" So John turns around and looks and he shows him the book. He tells him he left it on the bench. So John says, "Thanks, mate." And he walks over and he takes the book and he turns to leave. But then he stops and he looks back and he says, "Hey, I like your look. You mind if I photograph you with my Polaroid?" Well, of course he says yes. So John pulls this huge Polaroid camera out of a big pocket in his army jacket. And he starts taking pictures of him. And he has him pose this way and that, like some kind of model. Yes, "John, should I pose naturally?" And they both start laughing. And she says it was so much fun seeing John enjoying taking photos. And then John said, "Thanks, Mike. Good night." And he left.
Did he say what book he was reading?
No. But one could just imagine.
Imagine you're flying through the cotton candy clouds. You're safe now. Imagine lying in the green, green grass. Feel your toes sinking at last. Imagine your mother's warm, warm hug as she whispers your love. Imagine holding your daddy's hand, building castles in the sand. You can be whatever it is you wanna be. So close your eyes and fathom all the beauty you will bring, and believe. Oh, oh, Imagine you're splashing in a creek, playing a game of hide and seek. Imagine swinging on a swing, drifting in and out of dreams. Imagine you can see what no one else can see, and you can be who no one else can be. Imagine now everything's okay, like a chocolate chip cookie at the end of the day. You can be whatever it is you wanna be. So close your eyes and fathom all the beauty you will bring, and believe. Imagine.
Oh, I see you. Don't speak. It'll ruin the moment.